My name is Angelo. I used to think I understood fear. Not the cheap kind you get from horror movies or walking down dark alleys, but real fear. The kind that nests in your gut and whispers that something ancient and unfixable has seen you. I was with the Carabinieri for 8 years. Riot control, anti-terrorism, bomb disposal. I've swept hotel rooms before ambassadors slept in them and stepped over body parts after things went wrong. But nothing prepared me for what I faced under the Vatican. After I left the force, burnout, a limp from a shrapnel injury, and a cocktail of survivor's guilt, I floated between security gigs, embassy work, private events, even nightclub security in Rome. Nothing meaningful, but the pay was decent, and I kept my head down. One evening, a man knocked on my apartment door. No badge, no uniform, just a charcoal suit and eyes like wet stone. He didn't introduce himself. He handed me a sealed envelope and walked away. Inside were coordinates. Deep inside, the Vatican, a clearance badge, and a folded note that simply read, "Report at 1900. Come unarmed. Do not speak unless spoken to." Also inside the envelope, a black card with 5 rules printed in Latin on one side and English on the other. The rules made my stomach churn. Rule 1. Do not speak to a guest unless they address you first. Rule 2. Do not look beneath the veil. Rule 3. The bell rings at 3:33 a.m. Do not react. Rule 4. If a guest hands you a coin, swallow it immediately. Rule 5. At sunrise, open the eastern doors. Do not look back. No explanation, no signature. Just those rules and a Vatican seal on the bottom. I thought it was some kind of elaborate prank at first. Maybe an initiation for a private military contractor gig, but I've seen enough real weirdness to know when something is serious. My gut said this wasn't a prank. My gut was right. I arrived at the location, a stone archway hidden behind Vatican maintenance doors, and was met by 2 monks in blood-red robes with hoods pulled over their faces. No one said anything. They scanned my badge, handed me a small bottle of oil that smelled like thyme and old firewood, and gestured for me to follow. We descended for what felt like forever. Stone steps turned to carved hallways, turned to narrow corridors. The air grew colder and more metallic, the kind of chill that got into your teeth. No one explained anything. I counted 7 steel blast doors between me and the surface before we arrived at what they called the chapel. If hell had a cathedral, this was its annex. The chamber was cavernous, its domed ceiling lost in shadow, arches curled in unnatural spirals. The walls shimmered slightly, as if heat mirages flickered across the stone. At the center stood a black altar surrounded by seats. No pews, just stone chairs set in perfect concentric circles. Father Matteo, an old priest with a black cassock and a voice like rusted hinges, greeted me. "Guard the perimeter. Speak to no one. The rules are not suggestions." Then he handed me a second copy of the card, larger, this time, and nodded toward a small side room. There, I met the other guards, 5 of them, including myself. Luca was ex-French Foreign Legion, quiet, tightly wound, and already drinking strong espresso from a steel thermos. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it mattered. "You done this before?" I asked. He looked at me and said, 3 times. The rules are there for a reason. If you see something strange, you didn't. If you hear your name, you didn't. If anything makes you feel like breaking formation, don't." That was all. We took our positions at midnight, each guard assigned to one of the cardinal directions around the chapel. I was stationed south. My boots echoed too loudly in the stone corridor as I made my way to the post. At exactly 12:01 a.m., the guests began to arrive. They didn't come through the doors. They just were. One moment, the chapel was empty. The next, it was full of veiled figures in dark robes. Some were tall, impossibly so. Others were hunched or twisted. They moved like smoke, like memory, like things that were once human but hadn't been in centuries. None of them spoke. They took their seats in eerie unison. The torches flickered without wind. The temperature dropped 5 degrees in a blink. One guest glided past me, draped in a veil that shimmered with what looked like moving ink. I forced my eyes forward, away from the veil. Rule 2. The thing stopped beside me. I could feel it watching. I clenched my jaw so hard, I thought a molar might crack. After 10 unbearable seconds, it moved on. Luca passed by on a slow patrol and whispered, "They'll test you. Don't let them see your curiosity. That's where it starts." At 3:33 a.m., the bell rang. I don't mean a bell you hear with your ears, this one you feel. Inside your skull. It rang through the marrow in my bones, vibrating with a sound older than language. I bit down on my lip and kept my posture. The guests rose as one. Their heads, or what I assumed were heads, turned toward the altar. The black stone pulsed once, as if breathing. The ringing stopped as suddenly as it began. I exhaled, and only then realized I'd been holding my breath for minutes. Something brushed against my ankle. I didn't look down. At 4:06 a.m., something pressed into my hand. I didn't see it approach. One moment I stood at my post. The next, I was holding a coin, slightly warm, slick with something not quite liquid. A guest, if you can call these things guests, had stopped in front of me. Tall, veiled, utterly still. I saw no arms extend, no sound made. The coin bore a strange symbol. It shifted when I looked at it. Rule 4 said, "Swallow it." Immediately, I obeyed. It hit my tongue with a taste like scorched iron and something vegetal like grave dirt soaked in syrup. My throat convulsed. I gagged, but forced it down. A ringing filled my ears. Then I wasn't there anymore. I was standing in a black field. Something moved beneath the soil, something vast and slow. I turned in place and saw veiled figures arranged in a perfect circle. They were humming. I couldn't move. Their voices crawled into my mind. "Marked," they said. "He swallowed. He belongs." Then I heard my own voice whisper, "You are already beneath." I collapsed when I came back, stone against my cheek. Cold, my hand was clenched around nothing. Luca stood over me, face pale, jaw clenched. "Get up," he said. "You're lucky." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know what happened to the unlucky ones. The guests began to move again, closer to dawn, flowing like tidewater toward the altar. No footsteps, no sound, just motion. The air thickened and the torches dimmed until they barely flickered. The smell of something floral, roses left too long in water, filled my nose. I nearly gagged again. Luca met my eyes across the room. He looked afraid. That scared me more than anything. "You'll feel them leave," he mouthed. When the first hint of sunlight slipped through the upper slits in the stone wall, I moved to the ancient doors. They were carved with script I couldn't read and images I tried not to see. Figures with too many limbs kneeling before something bigger, veiled in shadow. I placed both hands on the cold stone and pushed. The doors groaned like a dying thing and gave way. The sunrise wasn't golden. It was the gray-white pallor of a hospital waiting room. Cold. Clean. Absolute. Something passed behind me. No footsteps. No scent. No presence. But I felt it press through me. It whispered into my spine without words. I obeyed Rule 5. I didn't look back. When I turned around, the chapel was empty. Doug was waiting outside. He always was. "Congratulations," he said. "You made it through." He handed me an envelope. Inside, crisp bills, an amount far more than agreed. Also, a coin, identical to the one I swallowed. Still warm. "How—" I started. Doug cut me off. "They noticed you. That's rare." I said nothing. "You'll be contacted again," he added. "Same place if you're willing. They don't forget who obeys." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat felt burned. I went home and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the chapel, surrounded by the veiled ones, their whispers curling under my skin. 3 days passed. Then the new envelope arrived. Same coordinates. New rules card. This time, 6 rules. Rule 6 was new. Rule 6. If they call your name, do not answer. I felt cold reading it. My mother called me that night. I didn't pick up. Her voice on voicemail sounded strange, slowed down, too soft, like something mimicking her poorly. Then, one night at 3:03 a.m., I heard it. "Angelo!" A woman's voice. Familiar, tender. I stood frozen in my kitchen, hand shaking, knife halfway through a loaf of bread. "Angelo!" it said again, behind me this time. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. I clenched my jaw and waited. When I finally blinked, the voice was gone. My kitchen clock read 3:33 a.m. I've been back twice since. Each time, The veil between things feels thinner. Guests linger longer. The torches don't flicker. They burn still, watching. I saw one guest remove their veil. Not fully, just enough to glimpse something underneath. It had eyes, but they weren't looking at me. They were looking through me. Later that night, I found Luca's coin in my locker. Not the one I swallowed, a different one. It was ice cold, and scratched on one side was a word I'd never seen before, but understood instantly. Taken. Doug won't answer my questions anymore. He just smiles. He looks younger now than when I met him. That bothers me in ways I can't explain. The last envelope had 7 rules. Rule 7 was blank. I stared at it for hours. I tried to rub it in, write over it, expose ink under heat. Nothing. Just a line. But when I woke up the next morning, the line had changed. It didn't say anything in words. Not really. But I knew what it meant. It's my turn to write it. I haven't slept in days. I hear the chapel's bell in my walls. My neighbor's baby repeats my name in her crib. My own reflection twitches too early, too often. The veil is thinning, and I know I've already stepped through. But I keep obeying, because the rules are the only thing keeping them from writing something worse. And if I stop, I'll be the next rule.